Hello, everyone. We're just letting you all in and letting people come in as they get here, but we do like to kick off right at 4 p.m. So I'd just like to welcome you all to this session in Inclusivity and Environmental Volunteering. My name's Christy Spire. I'm the Acting Team Leader of Nature Education with Green Adelaide, and I've had the pleasure of facilitating this series of seminars that Green Adelaide's been running across 2023. And we are now into our 8th instalment. And so, yeah, it's been fantastic to receive a lot of great feedback from you all, and the people that can come in live and the people that watch later as well. So as always, we would like to acknowledge, well, I would like to acknowledge that I am coming to you today from Kaurna country, Ngadlu Tampanthi, Ngadlu Kaurna, Yatanga, Imparenti. And my beautiful slide to also go with that acknowledgement is just being a little bit slow to come onto the screen. I'm sure it will come on in a minute. And just to thank Ghana once again for walking alongside us in our care of country and learning together. We appreciate all of the work that our Ghana colleagues are doing in this area and all the learning that is happening between us as well. So it's always good to acknowledge the work. So yeah, as I said, this is the 8th instalment and we're running these to help share the work of Green Adelaide and to inspire you in the work you're doing to help Adelaide become cooler, greener, wilder and more climate resilient. And we understand that it takes all of us to do this and multiple organisations, and Green Adelaide works in partnership with so many of you online today and other people across Adelaide. So a reminder that this session is being recorded and will also be available to you and all of your networks on our YouTube channel afterwards. And you're invited to ask questions at any time into the chat box on the side. You're all muted, unfortunately, in this format, and we will answer as many of these as we can at the end of the session with Robyn, Rachel and Jim today. And of course, you're also able to email us afterwards and we'll follow up on any links and share slides and so forth as well. So today, and my slideshow is not continuing for me. It's frozen there, but anyway, today we will hear from Rachel Yorston from Volunteerability, Jim from the Park Terrace Community Garden, and Dr Robyn Molsher from the Green Adelaide Community Partnerships team. And they'll take us on a dive into inclusivity in environmental volunteering. So really excited to have 3 people on the line today. The enormous personal and social value of volunteering is experienced by over 250,000 South Australians each year. Environmental volunteering can particularly benefit volunteers by facilitating ongoing nature connection, which improves health and well-being, which Robyn will talk much more in depth about. So thank you to Robyn from Green Adelaide, who will kick us off today, looking at why it's important, what Green Adelaide is doing and how you can get involved. So thanks so much, Robyn. I'll just get rid of my screen and you can share yours.
Okay, well, thanks, Christy. So yes, today I'm going to give an overview of how Green Adelaide has been actively facilitating inclusivity in environmental volunteering. But first I'm going to talk about why this is important to us. And as Christy mentioned, our vision is for a cooler, greener, wilder, more climate resilient Adelaide. And we can't do that on our own. There's only about 45 of us on the staff. And so we do this through partnerships and tangible action. And so it's important that the whole community is involved in cooling and greening Adelaide. And that's the reason we strive to be as inclusive as possible and give everyone the opportunity to be involved. So we know there are a lot of people doing some great work already, cooling and greening Adelaide, and that's the volunteers in Metropolitan Adelaide. So we support and build the capacity of around 120 volunteer groups through grants, tools and equipment, plants, training, networking. And the groups we support are very diverse. They range from repair cafes to community gardens to conservation groups to education groups. But we know that there are barriers for some groups to participate in environmental volunteering as well as connection to nature. And these barriers can be anything from access, motivation, time, transport. And there's 3 main groups that have been identified in the National Volunteering Strategy. It's First Nations groups, culturally and linguistically diverse groups, and the disability sector. So we're focusing on those 3 groups, reducing barriers. And the reason this is important is need the whole community be on board, and everyone's got the right to experience the benefits of it. There are many benefits to connecting to nature, and in particular to environmental volunteering, which has all the elements to maximise a person's well-being. And we also know that the more people connect to nature, the more likely to value it. So we're hoping everybody gets involved, connecting to nature and volunteering. So our approach has been through partnerships, co-design, raising awareness and trialling activities. So we've been, over the last couple of years, we've been connecting with organisations and groups that have underrepresented groups as their members, and asking them what would help your group connect to nature or to get involved in volunteering. What sort of activities would they be interested in? And then we partner with the agency. What can they help with? What can we help with so that we connect people to nature? And as I mentioned, recognising connection to nature is often the first step before volunteering, especially for migrants and new arrivals in their first year. Connection to nature is very important rather than the volunteering aspect. So some of the things we've been doing, we've been running cultural safety training for volunteers. We've been providing information on why it's been important to operate in culturally safe ways. We've been running cultural heritage management training, what to do if you find a culturally significant site. And the cultural safety training we've been delivering has been very popular. We've also been engaging with culturally diverse groups. And for example, we partnered with Australian Refugee Association and Salisbury Council and ran some gardening workshops connecting migrants and refugees to their local community garden and giving some information on gardening under the Aussie sun. So recognising a lot of the people may have already been farmers in their home country, but not used to the specific requirements in Australia. We've done things like partnered with Vinnie's Refugee and Asylum Seekers and Cleland Wildlife Park, and we've done some introduction to Australian wildlife sessions, which were quite popular. So teaching people the importance of native wildlife and how to approach them, what to do if you come across a kangaroo. With the Muslim Women's Association, we partnered with the Adelaide Botanic Gardens, and for them, what that was really important was the mindfulness aspect of connecting to nature and the health benefits. So we focused on that with a forest bathing session. We ran a focus group with some key agencies, and we ran cross-cultural training for volunteers as well as for staff. So that was on Islam, so people could operate and be more inclusive culturally. So in terms of disability awareness, we partnered with Volunteerability, and Rachel will talk more about that later, delivering some, Volunteerability ran some disability awareness training for volunteers about how groups can be more inclusive. We also help promote the toolkit, which Rachel will talk about, which helps volunteer managers be more inclusive. And we're developing a library of modified tools that help people with the on-ground aspect of volunteering. And we have those tools for hire, as well as if a group finds them useful, they can apply to us and we can purchase them. So some of the learnings on the way, gardening is a really great first step, connecting some of the underrepresented groups to nature. Wellbeing benefits are important to highlight for many groups, especially migrants and refugees in their first year. The trialling activities works well, so recognising that each different agency group has diverse members, needs a diverse approach. So We're trialling lots of different things and we're building partnerships. And it's really only until we've built these partnerships over the last couple of years, the focus group worked well because people were more confident to speak out what works, what doesn't work. And I've got a video. So I'm just finishing off now with a video just to wrap it all up because we've been doing some filming lately.
It's important for Green Adelaide to facilitate nature connection for some groups because we know that not all groups have the same access to nature as the broader community. In terms of volunteering, for example, we know there are barriers to volunteering and there's so many benefits for volunteering that we want to facilitate connecting those groups and reducing barriers.
One thing we found with the inclusivity is that everybody brings something to the garden, but often it's different. And if you have a disability, you might be struggling with something and somebody might be able to help you with that.
It contributes a lot to their health and especially in terms of their mental well-being.
People like myself that need to have these type of groups around to help get us out and about.
Being inclusive is very important because it means that we can have more people to be able to help because the more we get done, the more we can take care of nature because after all, we all live amongst nature.
We see the plants, different species to species, you think like, also we have a different cultures and different backgrounds and different style of life.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Robyn. Sorry if that sorry for everyone that if that video is a little bit stilted, but we hope that you enjoyed that and seeing all those beautiful faces and people learning together. So thanks so much for giving that very succinct overview of everything that's been worked on in the last little while. I'd like to now introduce Rachel Yorston from Volunteerability, as Robyn mentioned, who will talk to us now about connecting people with disabilities to volunteering. So thanks so much for being a part of this, Rachel. I'll hand over to you now too.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you to Robyn as well. It's been really great to work with you guys. I'm just trying to find my window. Okay. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm here to live on Kaurna and Parramatta country and enjoy our natural surroundings. It's amazing. Connection to nature is a very big part of my life, and I know it's a big part of your life as well. And I know that it can be very, very beneficial for people living with a disability as well. So our project is funded by the government. We've been going for a little over 3 years and we're funded until June next year. We've got a partnership with Northern Volunteering and Southern Volunteering. Some of you may even be members of that organisation. So we've got the volunteer management experience and we have the disability experience. So the program provides 3 key things, which is one-on-one support through a volunteering pathway. And that's for people who have an NDIS plan and those that don't. So even if you guys, if any of your groups have inquiries from people with a disability and they might need a little bit of help to fill in paperwork or to volunteer alongside of them, we can do that and it's completely free. We do professional development for volunteer managers and I'll get onto that in a little moment. That's with our website and our toolkit, and we also run disability awareness sessions and we can tailor them to particular groups. They're around about 2 to 2.5 hours long. And really we go through the social model of disability, we talk about unconscious bias, history, things like that, just to make people more aware. Our new website is volunteerability.com.au and as you can see from this little snippet, if you can see, there's 3 main sections. I want to volunteer, I'm supporting someone who wants to volunteer, and probably more relevant for the groups that are on today is I am a volunteer manager. So that has a lot of resources that you can tap into. So if you don't get anything out of today, or we've got a deep dive into more of these things, but it's really accessibility, inclusivity and equity benefits everyone, and that's including the groups. You know, word of mouth is still incredibly powerful, and if people know that they can be welcomed to be part of your volunteering workforce, then they're going to bring people along with them. It's actually easier than you think, and I'll get on to some tips and hints around that. I've been doing this for many years as well, and sometimes just moving a chair or a table or thinking about a parking spot or the time that someone volunteers can make a massive difference, and that's all you need to do to be able to include them in your group. And make it as easy as possible for volunteers to become involved. So this might not pertain to some of your grassroots organisations, but it's about limiting the amount of paperwork. That's probably the biggest stickler for a lot of people, and that would be for some people with disability, but also for the other groups that Robyn mentioned as well, especially if there's low literacy or it's difficult for them to understand English and so forth. So what I always try and stress, if you haven't already, think about having a welcomer or a buddy volunteer for new people. So you'll probably be able to identify already a few different people in your groups that are the bubbly people, the talkative people, so that when you do have a new member, there's someone specifically allocated to help that person on the first day, especially if they're new and they're not really sure about gardening. They might be a really experienced gardener or environmental volunteer, but it's still important to introduce them to others, let them know that, oh, we always stop at 10 o'clock to have a cuppa, or normally we go here to have a coffee afterwards. Just those little things to make people feel really welcome. To be flexible when you can. Obviously, you might only have access to a particular space on particular days, or, you know, if the weather is difficult, you know, that can be hard. But if there is opportunities for you to be flexible around times and tasks, that really, really helps as well. 20% of people in Australia live with some kind of disability, and it may be visible or invisible. And so having people from different groups involved is really representative of the community that you live in. You can't be what you can't see. And if other people can see themselves in that particular type of volunteer, then it makes it easier to believe that they can do that. Please focus on what someone can do and break down the tasks and roles that you might have in your group. So I've just got a few pictures there. So it might be someone just to cook the sausage little afterwards, maybe to do your social media, or, you know, write up some policies, for instance, someone to make the coffee and make cake, someone to raise some seedlings at home if that's all they're able to do. Just think about the wish list that you might have in your group for someone to do something a little bit extra. I know that potentially a lot of your work is weeding, and you're, you know, climbing hills and doing all that kind of stuff and maybe lifting things. But for people with mobility issues, there is still some things that they can do. Also think about maybe some half of our clients who are referred to our program live with autism, and many of them are young men aged between 20 and 30. They're very, very physically able, but sometimes they need to do the same thing over and over and over again and scaffold a task. So for instance, you might identify 5 different weeds that you want to get rid of. They may be able to focus on that one particular type. So just breaking down that task even further to say, okay, we want you to spot all the soursops, for instance, just pull those out so that they, especially if they're new to it, are not confused by having 5 different kinds that they've got to try and identify. That's what we would call roll carving, for instance. So on our toolkit, these are just some of the pages that we have. Like I said, it might not be applicable to some of your groups, but we've got lots and lots of hints and tips around all of the facets of the volunteer life cycle, including some great work health and safety videos, which includes gardening. You can see that picture there. And even hints and tips on accessible social media posts regarding volunteer ads. So we've got the right and the wrong, and you know, things like being really specific about when and where it is, and being open, and everyone can apply, and let us know what you can do, all that kind of stuff, instead of being a bit ambiguous about it. Not like save the environment, come on a Saturday morning here, you know, make it a little bit more specific. So these are the kind of resources that we have. These are the headings, if you like, of the pages. So there's lots and lots and lots of articles, videos, other papers. There's not 100% sure if there's anything on gardening groups, but there's things for sporting groups. There's all sorts of things. So if you're part of other organisations and want to be more inclusive, then there's so many things to read and get involved with. But I think more importantly, hearing from people that you work with is incredibly important. And Amy Anderson was involved, as Robyn mentioned. And so there's a quote from Amy. I'm sure you can all read that, but diversity and inclusion are so important because we need the help of our whole community to care for and treasure our environment. Plus, it brings new skills, ideas, and better empowers community groups when we include everyone. I ran a program years ago with Red Cross with people from culturally and linguistically diverse programs, and I learnt so much from them about fruit and veg growing, for instance. And my dad's a market gardener. The way that they did it, but we learnt from each other, and that's the amazing thing. And I know that that absolutely does happen when you get diverse groups together. So there's a QR code for our website. I encourage you to have a look. Also, Robyn and Christy will have all my details. Please feel free to email me anytime if you've got any questions, if you have any issues with existing volunteers that live with disability, or you want to get more people with disability involved in your community garden or the environmental work that you do. Please contact us, because we've always got lots of groups and different people that want to get involved but are just not sure how. But most importantly, they want to feel welcome and included when they do it. And so we want to make sure that they are too. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Rachel. And what a wealth of information and a great hub that has been created with that funding, and we'll continue on as well, which is awesome. So yeah, credit to you and your team. Look forward to digging into that a little bit more later, and hopefully there might be some more questions. But now we're going to flip over to an example of a group and a case study that have been trying to support that inclusivity. I'd like to introduce Jim Robinson, who will share about the Park Terrace Community Garden. So over to you, Jim. I think we've got you on board and we've got your slideshow. We made it. Thanks for coming.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I've got quite a few pictures to show you, but which explain exactly what happened with the Park Terrace Community Garden. The garden was actually established back in 2016. The next slide, thanks. I have to give these cues every now and again, so please excuse that. Okay. It was an inspired group of people, and for years the membership grew as fast as the plants. This was a welcoming haven and I guess a way to get away from the stresses of city living. But then, next slide, thanks. After a few years, there were some issues, some very big issues that had actually arisen. Homeless couples that actually moved into the shelter. So we reached out to rehouse them with homeless services. A lot of vandalism, it escalated over a period of time. Next slide, please. the abuse of people within the garden and that sort of thing actually made it very, very difficult to continue. It wasn't surprising that the committee then put it into hibernation for a while. But in late 2021, a small group, next slide please, represented the committee and decided that they would actually commit to opening up the garden again if we could get some sort of protection around the garden. We applied for a grant from the City of Adelaide, and we actually ultimately got that grant. But we also had to get permission from the APLA and the Parklands Authority, cattle tiller, and we found that they were actually an ally. They were fantastic with us, and they, after several presentations, we got through that very thing because we wanted to put a fence in the parklands. So we sweated on winning the grant from City of Adelaide, and that actually helped pay for the fence. Together with enormous moral support from the City of Adelaide, the fence arrived in October 2022. So that was, quite a while, and that was just the start. We next slide, please. As you can see, we had actually managed to recover the garden in so many different ways, but we had a lot of work to do. We had actually created a barrier, but we had to work on the fact of inclusion, the very thing that we actually stood for. We also were supported by donations of soil, and also the blown out COVID cost of the fence, which was reined in by some very, very giving providers, and we were able to truly to actually set up a plan to truly accommodate people with a disability. Green Adelaide helped us fulfil this wish. Next slide, please. As well as a whole lot of other things in replenishing the garden. One of our passions was to get the children's garden back again. Next slide. Green Adelaide actually helped us fulfil the wish that we had for funding the paths, the plants, some seedlings, even tools that made gardening easier. And we've been able to install wheelchair accessible paths within the garden. Some of us are still on our knees, of course, but and we shouldn't be. But we have a willing cohort of younger and fitter members joining our ranks, and I'll talk to you about some of those people later on. As you can see, the garden was actually brought back to life again with the things that we were growing just seemed to love their environment, obviously. Outside of the garden, outside of the fence, we also made a bit of progress in fixing some of the landscape. The lease area is actually very, very much larger than simply the fenced area. We went through a very, very difficult summer last summer, and we didn't have any water for 2 weeks, which was another story, and we can tell that at another time. And hopefully, we won't have any pictures of it too. Today, one of our most important goals in the garden is to share the fruits of our labour by growing our membership, and that in turn actually allows us to provide help for those doing it tough. Next slide, please. When you come to the garden, one of the things that you'll find is that people love to talk about things, and I'll probably talk about this. New members joined us throughout the time that we were building the fence. Rami is in Adelaide to finish his PhD, and he walked into the garden one day while the fence was going up, and he told me that he had actually planted a chili in one of the beds. He was checking out to see whether, in fact, it was still there. He was delighted that it was, and shortly afterwards, he and his partner actually joined and told us the fantastic story that he wanted to return to his homeland, and with the support of his fathers, to start a community garden with all that he had learned. In this photograph, you can see that he's learning how to adapt tools for a different use. We continued all of our work throughout the garden, and it continues every day. There's not a day that we're not busy in the garden. Next slide. This is a passion of ours to actually make this happen. We have a maze within the garden. We also have a whole area that we're extending the children's garden as well. Next slide, please. As you can see, one of the things that we had was paths and all that sort of thing, where we had laid new paths, but we needed to actually make it much more accessible in certain areas. Next slide, please. We cut a path which was the entrance to the garden. There's as you can see, a team there. The guy that's actually next to Rami, who's on the far right, is Bao, and he's from China and had actually come to do a course here in Australia, decided to stay, and he's changed his profession, and he's now an aged care worker. And he loved his time in the garden. Next slide, please. This is the finished path. Not an interesting shot, but very interesting to anyone who wants to be able to get across that lawn and into the garden. Next slide, please. In front of that post there is an area that we would really like to have a disabled car park. That's currently under negotiation, and it's something that we've been lobbying for quite some time. Next slide, please. These are some wicking beds that we bought thanks to Green Adelaide once again. They are wheelchair accessible wicking beds. Next slide, please. And as you can see, the talented person sitting there, Simon actually enjoys planting some things, and also just the way that gets him out and about too. Next slide, please. I guess the thing that one of the things that we've been worried about too is making sure that there is accessibility in the garden. There is certainly accessibility within the fenced area. There is one of the things that we've done is taken on the beds outside of the garden as well, in that larger leased area, because we want them to be some grazing beds for passers-by. Next slide, please. So if we find the end of this little story, support that we've actually had from so many different people, from people within the community. If you go to the next slide, as well as, we'd like to thank all of those people, because we've not only have they provided funding for us, but they've also been very, very supportive of us in gaining help from other people outside of their realm. And I just wanted to say that is a fantastic thing about the garden, and the inclusivity of the garden actually provides. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I'm sorry that it was a bit jumbled.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jim. I appreciate that. Yeah, and encourage everyone in this webinar format. You don't have access to microphones, even though we're a bit of a smaller group today. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to pop in the chat to ask either Robyn, Jim, or Rachel, yeah, please pop that in now. I've got one here. Oh, great. This is from Ryan Sims. Thanks so much. Some great and inspiring information today. Good when things go well, but always good to learn from mistakes. Can anyone share any examples when trying to create a more inclusive volunteering community that didn't go well and what you would do differently? Any experiences, Robyn or Rachel, that you're kind of happy to share?
I have one experience.
Sure.
Very early in the piece, an older gentleman came to the fence and was mortified that the fence had actually gone up in the parklands, and he continued with this sort of that this was an exclusive space now, was it? You know, and it actually sharpened our perception of the way that something like a barrier does great things for the things that we wanted to stop, like vandalism and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it actually looks like it is closed off to other people. So in every way, it's actually sharpened our perception of the things that we do, so that we are seen as inclusive, so that we are doing things outside of that, and that we do let people in. We are open at certain times. So that's just an experience.
Yeah, Jim, and do you have, how do you kind of make people know about that, I suppose? Do you have signage? Do you do kind of letterbox drops? How do you actually show people that it's an open space?
Most of it is in social media, and I think that what's actually happening is that people are starting to respond to the fact that, no, this is not just a fence to keep people out. This is at night. This is an important place, and people come and make a contribution to that.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Rachel, did you have an example that came to mind?
Yes, probably some of the barriers that come up, or that things that go wrong, are around support workers. So if people are coming along with somebody who supposedly is supposed to be helping them, so the way that support workers should work is that if someone can't use their hands, then the support worker will do that part, and the person with the disability will do everything else. So the support worker is there as like a tool, as such. So if someone is vision impaired, then the support worker's there to help with that. They shouldn't be taking over, and they also shouldn't be just sitting there on their phone either. So it's okay to talk to the support worker about what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong. They're there to support the person to participate in the way that the person with a disability has asked them to. So I know that that can be a little bit tricky, but it's okay to talk to them about that if you feel comfortable doing that. But if there's an issue in your group, then you can always give me a call and I can talk you through that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, great example, Rachel. Yeah. Robyn, any challenges or examples that come to your mind?
Just one recently. We were involved in a gardening workshop with a culturally diverse group, and people thought everything had been considered. However, the gardening teacher, everybody was given a very large pot to take home, but everybody had walked there or gone on public transport. So we forgot about some assumptions that people thought people were driving there. So just about the learning was thinking of every possible way to be inclusive, not just the obvious.
Yeah, totally. Great example. Awesome. There's a few more questions coming through for you all. Is there a way for our volunteers to tap into the inclusivity training that others are offering? So the cultural awareness trainings and so forth. I think I can kind of answer that for Carolyn. You know, if you're a registered group or linked with Green Adelaide in any way, they can access cultural training. Have you got some coming up, Robyn?
We have a northern
in the pipeline. Yeah.
We have a Northern Aboriginal Sites tour for volunteer groups in the northern region that's coming up soon in the next couple of months.
Yeah, great. But yeah, if people want to stay in touch, with Robyn and her team, that you'll be notified of when more training's coming up, and the same with volunteerability. Is that right, Rachel? If people want to tap into your training, we'll send you all the links.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Brilliant. Sally, I would love to include people with disability, etc., but I'm worried about all the health and safety policies and need to complete lots of paperwork. Would we direct them to your lovely hub, Rachel, to kind of help step through that and kind of take away some of that fear about the paperwork?
It shouldn't really be any different, honestly. And someone's not going to generally sign up to do something with you if they feel that it's not going to suit their situation. So it's no different. If a group, say a Day Options or something like that, wants to come and visit your community garden, then they're the ones that have to fill in a risk assessment form for the site and all those kinds of things. But if you're including a person with a disability, your policies, whatever they may be, will be exactly the same. They don't need to be any different.
Right. Yeah,
you just maybe need to think about reasonable adjustments, just like Park Terrace have with paths and so forth. It's good to show people the space, but if they can't access a particular area because, it's undulating or whatever, then maybe they can do the thing in another area that's closer to the car park, or, they can take something away at home and raise seedlings or whatever it is. So it's just being flexible and thinking about it, but the policy shouldn't be any different.
Yeah, great. And, I think there's support from, organisations like yourself, but also from, local government and Green Adelaide as well. So, do reach out and, get those supports from people that have done it before, or other volunteer managers that do it all the time as well. It's always good to, chat it over with other people that are more experienced. It always kind of helps to relieve some of those anxieties. And Sylvia out, Sylvia Clark, do you have any suggestions for the type of inclusive activities that would translate well into more remote and regional settings, so outside of the city? Do you kind of work outside of the city, Rachel? Oh, you're on mute.
We do. So we run from the Barossa right through to the Fleurieu, and the Barossa Bush Gardens have got some people involved in what they do. It should really be the same, but transport, as Robyn mentioned before, is always a massive barrier, especially for people with disabilities. And if someone's using a wheelchair, or it's really tricky for them to get in and out of a bus or another high vehicle, then that can be tricky. But otherwise, as long as you kind of think about the space that you're wanting to do the activity in and be really open and honest about how it's accessible. Obviously, the environment, it's there for the animals and so forth. You don't want to put a great big track through just because a few people. That's not what it's all about. But it's thinking about how that person can be involved with that activity. Yeah. And we've got things on our website about events, how to hold an inclusive event and things like that. But if you're holding it in an environment like your background screen, there's some things that you can't manage. Yeah, and that's fine too.
Yeah, totally. Any types of activities that you've heard of, Robyn, that have worked well in some more regional settings?
Yeah, so any nature connection type activities, wildlife walks or anything you might already be doing as a landscape board. Like, for example, we're going to be running a couple of events with Parks and Wildlife Service during Nature Festival, connecting new arrivals and refugees to national parks. So we're going to be taking a bus around Belair National Park, just showing everybody the facilities, what's on offer, looking at kangaroos, koalas, state flora nursery, just introduction to the park. So it's just about asking people what that would be, giving them a few examples and saying, is there anything there that's of interest, and then developing something that people are interested in.
Yeah, definitely. Great. And the next question is a similar question, I think, to the one above, but how to maintain motivation of volunteers who are frustrated with increasing red tape when organising local events and that type of thing. I think Joe's talking more about when generally work alone rather than in a group scenario. So that's interesting. Or maybe they're wanting to, I know we've had a few examples of people wanting to run events in their local spaces, and obviously there's insurance coverage and things that you have to think about that when you do that. Any tips on that, Robyn and Rachel?
Form a group. If you are doing your own verge, maybe ask everybody in the street and form a verge group in your street, and then it's much easier to navigate those administrative things.
Yeah, or partner with an existing group that's doing similar things. I know that local councils can be a little bit tricky. I was on a volunteer managers forum the other day, and there was a gentleman there from Adopt a Spot who was talking about, whose volunteer is that and which area can they go in and so forth. And look, sometimes you can't get around the red tape, but focus on what you can do to make a difference in the environment, although it's not always possible. I appreciate it's hard, but sometimes you just can't get around those things. Yeah, make friends with your local councillors and tell them all about it.
It's a very good tip. Yeah, keep it relational and personal, and all of us, Green Adelaide and local council, and are also wanting to support people's safety and to be able to volunteer. And so, yes, it might seem like a lot of red tape, but there are people working in councils to support volunteers and to manage them and to help reduce some of that as well, so that more people can get out and about and be involved in their streets and get involved. But as everyone understands, there's insurances and things that need to be covered, and so if you run into any curly questions or things where you don't quite fit within your local council or within Green Adelaide, feel free to give us a buzz to chat through those as well, because we're always open, because the urban environment is very complex and there's lots of different ways to volunteer, and we want to make sure that people can volunteer where they can as well. But particularly in a group does really help over time as well, and when you run out of energy or when things come up as well. So Jim, did you want to say anything to that in terms of any frustrations that you may have found around working with council and how you've overcome them?
I think one of the things that we did very early in the piece was make sure that we had some good relationships. There was things get tested at times. There are different agendas and so on. And so if you're aware of that, that's knowing what is actually in their plans as well as your plans is an important thing to do. So that just gets, you don't have to be buddies with them. You really just what you do need to have is a cordial relationship with the people who are ultimately going to be able to help you.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, it's tempting to feel like that government are always blockers, but often it's about finding the right person and developing that relationship. Yeah, that's fantastic, Jim. Yeah, awesome. Carolyn Pickering has just said, great meeting, discussion and presentations. Thank you so much. Do any of you have any final little tips for people before we close off today? Anything that's just been triggered by some of those questions?
My big thing is the diverse approach. Lots of diverse needs a diverse approach, and trialing different things.
Yeah.
Just be open. You know, Jim talked about that a lot. Just be open to what people can bring, and don't think about those barriers, whether that be a language or abilities or whatever it is. Just think about what they can do and what they can bring for your group.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Excellent.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, well, thank you to all of you, and yeah, have definitely learnt a lot today. So thank you for and thank you to everyone else that has joined in now or later as well. So do remind everyone, it's such an important topic for everyone to think through and to remind themselves of. And I really like the way that you framed it, Rachel, in terms of thinking about what they're contributing to the group, you know, flipping the way that we talk about it and talk about people and what they bring in a very kind of strength-based way rather than a deficit. So yeah, just loved the way that you've all been sharing that, and yeah, just trialing again, and you know, keeping on working in with different people in different ways. So it's a challenge in our system where, you know, you kind of want to have these things that just roll out, but we know that it's and thanks, Jim, again for that reminder of building really strong relationships, and as we know that's what really brings change over time for our well-being and also for our environment. So thank you for all those reminders today, and we'll definitely share some links and the resource reminders of that amazing hub in a follow-up email to everyone that's registered today. So not everyone's made it here today, but we'll get all that information to them. And we'll include a link to our next seminar series session, which is we're going to be joined by Harry Rust, who will share his exciting research into the micro bats of Adelaide. And that one will be coming up on Wednesday, the 18th of October. So yeah, for all of you that would like to learn about that, it's going to be a fascinating deep dive as well. And you can catch up on all our previous seminar series as well, from looking at biodiversity, sensitive urban design, to cultural burning with our Ghana colleagues. There's a whole wealth of seminar series up online. So we encourage you to join the Green Adelaide mailing list as well to receive our monthly newsletter and stay up to date with all the many projects and events that are happening. But for now, we'll close off, and yeah, look forward to seeing you out there in the environment, caring for it in all the unique ways that each of us do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.